everyone. Welcome back to Monique.vc with Monique Woodard. That's me. Uh, Today, we are going to be talking to Ashley Stewart from Patent Ventures. She's a designer, she's a creative, she's an entrepreneur, she's a brand strategist. She's all of those things and more to all of the founders and entrepreneurs that she works with. And for today's video, we both brought out the big hoop energy with the bamboos. So I'm excited for you all to meet Ashley Stewart from Patent Ventures. So let's get into this video. Please like the video, share it, and definitely subscribe to the channel because there will be more. Ashley, welcome.
Hey, what's poppin'?
It's so good to see you. I feel like we had the same like big hoop aesthetic going on today. So
For
I'm excited
sure,
for
for
the combo.
sure. Thank you for having me. This is definitely such an honor, and you're probably one of the favorite people in my world too to have cross paths with this year.
Yeah. I want to get into um, what you do. Everyone talks about trying to be a full-time creative,
Hmm.
but it's a really hard road to actually get there.
Yeah, no, it's difficult. I think it's been romanticized a lot. And it is it's romanticized in a lot of ways. It's romanticized by the grind and the hustle, and then it's romanticized by like the success and the bling bling. But I don't know if we consider that a lot of creativity actually comes from chaos, and that's really the best projects come from that sort of chaotic place. And accepting that is a really hard thing to do because you know just the narratives that are out there are very linear, and very well, if you have faith then you're just going to be able to do it. And I think that's true, but there's a little bit more complexity to it, that if you have faith then you're willing to have faith through the chaos and the disorder that you're going to experience, because you know resistance is going to meet you there. Anyone who's trying to trailblaze or create new paths, however that works, you're going to meet resistance, because there's no pathway there, there's no clearing, there's no order, there's no organization. And so once you come across that that chasm, you have to figure your way out and you have to clear it. And that's really what the name Patent Ventures comes from. Patent is a term for clarity and a term for having things clearly, seeing things clearly and having clear vision, or understanding. And ventures is about an adventure and it's about a journey. And so I put Patent Ventures together that way because one of the things that kind of has inspired me or that I've learned from just in my own journey trying to get here, and I'm by no means, I think, successful in the ways that I probably should be, but I think that I'm successful in that what I intend is what I do. And so you know my moniker, or just the statement that I couple with Patent Ventures, is being outside the mainstream. And really it speaks to the type of clients that I work with, but it also speaks to the journey that a lot of them take, which is charting new waters and going on new adventures and doing things that are off the beaten path and creating their own lanes.
Yeah, you work with a ton of entrepreneurs and just people creating new things. And one of the things that, you just mentioned it, um, that creatives and entrepreneurs kind of fall into is sort of this glorification of the hustle,
Yeah.
right? And you see there's so much hustle porn on the internet, on YouTube,
uh,
everywhere, right? You got the same 24 hours in the day that Beyonce has, and rise and
Mhm.
grind, and like all of these sayings that people sort of ascribe to entrepreneurship and, you know, being a creative. But I think that in order to do either of those things really well, you have to give yourself the space to
Mm.
like rest, right?
Mm.
The space to create. So,
Yeah.
how do you make sure that you're giving yourself, because you're both a creative and an entrepreneur? So,
Yeah.
how do you give yourself that kind of space and not get into this, like, you know, grind of hustling 100% of the time?
Um, I have employed the idea of Sabbathing. So, Sabbathing is traditionally a Jewish culture thing where, you know, they from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday, they absolutely do nothing but, you know, spend time with their families. You know, traditionally they would read the Torah and you know, have dinner, that sort of thing. But I employ that in my life in a modern context, in that on Fridays usually, which today is a Friday, but on Fridays usually I try to do no work, take no meetings, take, you know, no like client calls. But I try to enact that thing of the Sabbath of like doing things that I enjoy, that bring me pleasure, which is why we're talking right now, because, you know, having these sort of conversations is something that I find pleasure in. And so, you know, doing things that bring me pleasure, doing things that I can delight in, having a glass of wine. I think it's really important to schedule our delight and our pleasures. And so for me, that's, you know, embracing this idea of, you know, Sabbathing one day out the week that just is me, committed to me and to my faith, and to, you know, just even my faith in my humanity and belief in myself, like, you know, restoring that within myself, however I need to do that, with my maker, with my creator, with my hands, with other people, with friends that I haven't talked to in a while, you know. Uh During quarantine, you know, something that we regularly do, or, you know, just try to do often, is, you know, hop on Zoom and have a happy hour, you know. But I think it's really important to rest, and I'm so glad that you brought it up, because I mean, it hasn't been until recently with, you know, platforms like the Nap Ministry and, you know, things like that, where we're really starting to see that, like, man, like rest is really important to the process, even. And even if you don't
Restoration.
believe in it in terms of, I don't want to take no days off. All right, cool. But let's incorporate rest into the process, because it maybe you frame it as an incubation time.
Mhm. Speaking of incubation, you've been working with a ton of startups,
Hmm.
um, and a lot of them are often like very young, nascent companies. What drew
Yeah.
you to working with startups versus like going the opposite direction and, you know, working with like these big corporates? What is it that you love about working with?
I love working with people who are open to um, really counterculture concepts. And I think that that is probably more aligned with startup culture than it is with corporate culture. However, for some reason, there is this there is this sort of integration that's happening, where I feel like corporate culture is trying to embrace startup culture,
Yeah.
and startup culture is seemingly trying to embrace corporate culture, and it's weird. And and sometimes I don't know why it's happening that way, but
Yeah.
it feels that way sometimes, because there are some startups that I've come across, or, you know, some founders that I've worked with that I've had to even, you know, decline working with, because they want to employ corporate structures or corporate methodologies to their startup, and I get why, but then I'm looking structurally at where they are in their process, and it's like, you really should be taking more risks than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
You really should be taking more risks than this, um so that once you do hit that scale, you can transition into that corporate sort of um theology, or that corporate sort of philosophy. So yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up. I think I'm more comfortable working with people who are sort of out of their idea phase. But I definitely enjoy working alongside and partnering with people who are trying to do something risky.
Yeah. Um, Part of that is in helping them create and develop a brand and a brand voice.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think people sometimes feel like they can do that later, especially if they come from, often I see this with like technical founders. They're just like, okay, it's all product first and it's all
Mm-hmm.
first. But I think that people need to be thinking about brand from day zero.
Yep.
So, how can you get people to start thinking about their brand as early as possible? And how do you lead them down that path?
Reminding them that human beings are walking stories, and that's how we move through life, and that's how we um relate to each other. It's how we make sense of the world through stories, and that's nothing what a brand is. For some people, it's a myth that they create, and I don't mean myth in a derogatory sense, but just you know having some sort of uh, aspiration to look to, or something to look back on, is very powerful for the psyche and for connecting, and for things like that. So once I remind people that stories move us, and that the beauty or the attraction to a story is what keeps us or continues to lure us in, the mystery or the thrill or the humor. It's just like watching a movie. If you are hooked, you hooked. It's like turning on your favorite sitcom. Like, once it's on, and you will set aside time just to engage with that TV show. And so I think it's the same way with brand. Focusing on it from day one about who you want to be, what you want to do, the story that you want to tell. You know One of my favorite rappers, Nipsey Hussle, says inspiration is one of the humanity's highest acts, and it really is, because you can inspire people to purchase, you can inspire people to hate you, you can inspire people to love you, just all by what you show up as, and what you say you represent. And that's why brand is so important, even outside of the visual. I think we forget about that, is that there's just so much more to what brand is, outside of visual or your logo. Or
What are some of those elements that stand out for you?
it's really the for me personally, it's the whole aesthetic experience. It's taste, it's sound, it's visual, it's sensory, touch, feel. And a lot of times, we can think about those things in the physical, tangible aspects of them, but even from the abstract aspects of them, how are people going to judge what you're putting out? How are people going to sense, or what kind of emotions are they going to feel once they see this? What does it sound like? Everybody has a sound, everybody has a tone. And we know through just communicating with each other that if you say a certain word in a certain sound, it can mean very different if you say it differently. And then of course all the visual elements, pattern, texture, hierarchy, size, dynamicism, color, tone, all those things when those things start to play together, we don't realize it in real time, but um, the people who are architecting those things from the background, they're being very intentional about what they're doing. And some of the most beautiful projects and beautiful brands that we've come in contact with in this lifetime have definitely considered those things.
What are some of the brands that do stand out for you like that?
Oh man, that's a hard question. I'm gonna probably bite my lip saying it because it's such a like trendy brand, but Fenty, and not because I think that their visuals are all that like different or uh just groundbreaking, but I think the combination of voice, tone, representation, um messaging, colors, just the intention down to what they name things and what they, how they show up on social media and who they choose to, evangelize and who you see using the product. It's inspiring because it's like, how did this company come into a market that we all know is super saturated and just create an entire army behind it, so that was the Fenty brand is definitely one that is inspiring for me in terms of just being authentic to who you are and trusting that and leading with it and knowing who you're for and what you're supposed to do and not really being dissuaded by you know what's already out there, but saying, okay, what's out there but what's missing,
Yeah.
and how can we be true to who we are and put things out there that the world can feel. And I think that that's probably one brand that I'm just like, yeah, they're doing some really dope stuff. um and this is shameless, very shameless. The plug, uh, their client Sherelle is doing some really dope stuff. And I can say that from from the background, and I'm very I'm very excited for what people are going to see in the next 3 6 12 months, because I think that again the plug is an organization and a brand that is finally coming into its own, and that story that we talked about earlier about inspiring people and really telling that story, I think that that's being done now. And so I think it's going to be impactful for a lot of people.
Yeah.
the,
Yeah.
the, the thing with the plug, that I wanted to make sure stood out was that it's about the messaging.
Mhm.
It's really about the tone and the voice of like what these founders and what these emerging markets and what these leaders and authorities and operators in this industry are doing, that are not being highlighted in other places, are not being talked about in other places. And so I really wanted to make that the anchoring piece of the plugs branding. And so when you see it, it's pared down, like the logo is just words,
Mhm.
it's black and white, it has a couple of colors, but once you get to the words, we've spent a lot of time on choosing really good words, and Sherelle's done an amazing job of cornering what it is that she's talking about when she says Black innovation economy. And you know, just highlighting those things was definitely important to me. And I think that's one of those nuances that sort of I miss in general branding is that there are a lot of brands that are cool looking, and that was why it was really hard for me to answer the question about who do I see that's really good, because there are a lot of brands that are cool looking.
Yeah, but I think
But there
what
are,
I've identified is like the Plug and Fenty are both doing a really good job of speaking the language of
mm-hmm,
people who often are not spoken to in their
yep,
specific spaces. So, Fenty using slick woods and
yep,
Joni Ann, they were like one of the first to have an older woman modeling, and not in an older woman brand, right?
yeah,
And when you look at the Savage Fenty lingerie line, you've got all types of bodies. You've got 4X, 2X size women in lingerie. So they were speaking to a demographic group that wasn't really being spoken to yet.
yep.
And Cheryl's doing the same thing with the Plug, and speaking about Black creatives and Black technology, in a way that hadn't really been done before. So I think I can definitely see the overlap in why those brands are two of your favorites.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of people that look cool. Like I can, they look real cool. But I think that there is just something distinct about, a piece of those brand elements standing out in the communication of like those core values, and it being sometimes nuanced in just little stuff, making sure that there are little things that, like, people might not notice at first, but once they start like digging in, and once they start like, dissecting certain things, and, they start putting two together, it's like, oh, like
Yeah.
they have this sense of delight, like, wow, like, okay, I get it. Like I get it. I get it. This is okay, cool. Like I want do they do more of this? And I think I have my gripes about the industry, especially from a tech and product perspective.
Yeah. What are some of them?
You know, there's so much similarness and sameness
Yeah.
that, you know, I don't know, it makes me feel uh boxed in sometimes, and I don't really like that feeling. But I think that there are people like you, there's people like Sherelle, there's people like Rihanna, that really want to see a world that isn't so restricted to its corners.
Yeah.
I think they want to see a world where everybody can have their proclivities and, be respected and honored. And um, I really appreciate that, because everybody's journey isn't the same. And when you can see that sort of representation in the products that are out there, with the brands that are pushing the products out there, with the the media that is talking about, what's out there, and with people who are supporting founders and entrepreneurs who want to do these type of things. I think that that's encouraging, to live in a world where everyone feels like a ruler, and not everybody feels like they have to be ruled.
I think a lot of the sameness that we see in design, especially in technology, is about one, it's about mimicking like what they see as successful, but it's
Right.
also about people designing for the same demographic and creating
Mm,
products for the same demographic over and
yep.
over again. So let's talk a little bit about the ways that you can target different demographic groups and really speak to different people through your design choices and your creative choices and
Mhm.
how you show up as a brand.
I think,
Mhm.
how can founders, better brand for who they're talking to, is really getting to know who they're talking to, and understanding, like, what do they see on a daily basis, where do they go, do they travel, if they travel, where are the places that they go, what are they struggling with in life, because I think if we so much focus on what they're trying to obtain, sometimes we miss out on like where they are right now. in their life. And sometimes we can do what's called like vanity branding, and just hook them into some, like, selling them a dream, when really we can just mirror back to them who they are.
Yeah.
And if we're the same, if we have the same, or if my brand or my product has the same values and beliefs as them, we should be able to mirror each other and have a conversation, and them get to know what I can do for them, and they can hook into who we are and what we believe, and it can be a reflection of them in their daily life.
I'm seeing a lot of brands get a lot more personal and, try to sort of weave in social justice messages into their branding. I feel like that's a new this year kind of thing.
Yeah.
And people are, some of them are doing a good job of it. Some of them are, not doing a great job. Um, what are you seeing as people start to weave these social justice messages into their brands? And should they be doing that? And how can they do a better job?
Should they be doing that? I mean, it's such a loaded question, right? Because it's like, yeah, you should, but should you have to be told to do it? I mean, no. There are so many small grassroots organizations that are doing this work,
Yeah.
and that don't have nearly the access or the capital to do it on the scale that some corporations do. And I think for new brands that are coming in and they want to, or they really desire, it's really in their heart to have some sort of social justice component, um, I think that they should yield their time, and it should be more of a partnership than it is more so like, we're going to take this on and we're going to be the voice of this. I mean, unless that's part of your brand tenets, and it's like your, even from a founder perspective, your personal calling to activate in that way. I think that there are people who would appreciate even just a seat in the room to have a conversation about what they're doing and what their initiatives are, and what their organizations have been planning and doing in the communities that they are in. And so, when it comes to social justice, I think, the PR statements are, it's like, thank you for some sort of recognition and awareness. Um, but even with, doling out philanthropic donations and things like that, it's also like, okay, but how are you, helping these organizations, or not even helping them, but seeing them, and recognizing their work and highlighting their work, because even, giving them a platform, how are you doing that, or amplifying them, because giving them money is one thing, and I'm sure that a lot of organizations could use that, but also inviting them into, conversations, and inviting them on stages, and seeing where some sort of synergy or overlap could be. I mean, I think that is
Yeah, I think
probably more
elevating
helpful.
their voices,
Yeah.
is an even bigger, in some cases, is an even bigger value than,
Yeah.
just giving money, right? I think it's give money and,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's not, don't stop giving the money.
Right. Right. And I mean,
And
I, there are startups, and there are organizations like Goody Nation,
mhm,
who are doing really great, dope stuff
yep,
with entrepreneurship and social justice, at the same time. But again, like, those are part of their tenets, and so it's like, if you have a makeup brand, or if you have, a consumer packaged good, just saying like, yeah, we're gonna, give $1 million to founders. Okay, yeah, all right. But also, how how, like, it is, are you, like, what are your hiring practices? Yeah, like, I want to know if social justice is something that you really want to put out in the world, and that's something that you really want to activate behind, then it sort of has to be integrated into the business itself, because anything else is just press release, public relations
Right.
sort of stuff.
Saw those black squares on Instagram go away.
Yeah, about that. I mean, we just recently saw, Wells Fargo in a Hell's fire. So, I mean, it's, talk is cheap.
Yeah. One thing that I think a lot of larger corporations haven't been doing, and even, mid to large size tech companies haven't been doing, is actively working with creatives like yourself who can help them create that message, right? It's typically created
Yeah.
inside their little insular walls and then sent out, and then the people react to it in the way that the people react to it, but it feels like it doesn't necessarily have the correct people's hands on it from the beginning, right?
Yeah. In the 90s, there was a Black designer who wrote an article and said that the design industry is 99% white. And, it's true for a lot. I mean, in Silicon Valley, how many designers are Black or people of color? Um, you know, how many? So, like, that's also a question. Just who's getting a chance to create for, large amounts of people, and
Right.
are these, oftentimes people will contract out to agencies, and, even these agencies are lacking in Black creative talent. And sometimes the question that I ask, and I don't have an answer, but the question that I ask is that intentional? Is that intentional? Because talk is cheap, and, you know, companies say a lot, and they want to appeal and come off a certain way, uh, but they also want to maintain a certain respectability and prestige. And a lot of times when we talk about Black design and Black art and Black aesthetic, um, it's not necessarily seen as something to be valued or appreciated.
Right. But I think it has to be because the customers are changing, right? And
Yep.
if we care about returns and we care about profits, and, as a venture capital investor, that is what I care about. We have to recognize that the people that we're selling to, or that, companies are selling to, that demographic is shifting. And
Mhm.
if you're not shifting with it, then you're not going to be getting the same profits, the same returns. Your earnings calls are going to be very different sounding once we do finally shift to majority minority, or, the new majority, as I like to call it.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, and I mean, that's all of that is true, and I'm just gonna underline it because I mean, I've worked in um, CPG for a long time. I've worked with a long time hair care brand, and a lot of times the consumer doesn't naturally say when they pick up something, and sometimes they do because it's by design. But when they pick up something, they're like, "Oh, Black person designed this." But if you believe that all things are connected, then there's a certain love and appreciation and even experience that comes from, just being who you are and being in this skin, that comes through and translates in the way that you design. And I'm a person that believes that everything is connected. And so, when everything doesn't have to look black to have that sort of touch and feel and connection with whoever it is that you're intending to talk to.
For sure. For sure. It's definitely all about sort of the underlying references and the,
Yep.
you know, again, this word keeps coming up, but it's the aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
It's how you speak to people, and it's, you know, the colors you use and the shapes and all of that comes together to kind of say, like, this is the group that we are talking to. This is the conversation that we're having.
Yeah.
Um,
This is, we actually give a flip. Like we care. Like, and I mean that the best design, the best aesthetics, like you feel that, like, oh my God, there was so much care put into this, or these this company cares about
mhm.
me, like this company cares about me in a way that, like, maybe it's not how my mom cares about me, but they cared enough to do this and execute it, and I appreciate it, and so I'm gonna buy it.
Right. Because consumers want to feel seen. They want to feel included in the conversation.
Yep.
Not as like as if, oh, I'm buying this product, but I can tell it's not for me. It's for somebody else, but I need it, so I'm gonna buy it anyway. Right.
Yeah.
We want to feel included in the conversation.
Or they're bamboozled, right? It's like, yeah, this product is for me, this product, they like they created this for me, and man, I really love this brand, and then once I connect and I engage and I go deeper, I'm like, wait, I've been bamboozled. Like, this actually don't, wow, okay, and I mean, that can come from a myriad of places. It can come from who's working for you, it can come from, you know how you personally decide to show up in the world. I mean, we see that now, like founders who are showing their true colors, and as a result, you know, losing customers.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, what's inspiring you right this minute?
Man, um, I, what's inspiring me right at this minute? I am inspired by two things. I'm inspired by creators. I mean, there are so many people creating, just like I'm talking about, like, and I pause to say this, but I think it's the easiest way that I can convey it. But lowbrow, like simple creators, like people who are just like creating things, like, and it's crazy. And one of the things that is inspiring to me, and this is wild, is OnlyFans. I don't know why, but like women who are like taking their power and like creating these stories behind like the content that they're creating, and like the audiences that they're compelling with these stories. And I'm just like, I mean, they're doing their whole like pre-post production, like it's a whole thing. And I'm just like, and they're doing it with like just their camera, some apps.
Yeah.
Yeah, like and I'm just like, what? Like, like, so that's inspiring,
Well,
just from an imagination standpoint. Like the OnlyFans girls, the Twitter hotties, like the Twitter creatives and the Twitter artists, like they really just, they on a daily basis, Twitter is probably the platform that I probably would never get rid of, just because on a daily basis I'm like, wow, y'all's minds, how do you think of this?
yeah,
So
some of the best comedians are on Twitter, specifically Black Twitter.
specifically, yes, yes. Sherelle put a article out about Black sass, and
Hmm.
um, that's very interesting to me, just from a perspective of, what's next? Like, like who's out there doing that we just, it's just not on our radar yet. Like, who's coming?
That's right. Well, thank you for, sitting down and talking to us today. Tell the people how to get in touch with you, where they can reach you, where they can find you.
Yes, you can find me at www.patentventer.es. And you can find me on Twitter. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, the rule is there's no judgment. And that's Ashley with 3 Y's S. And that's where y'all can kind of connect with me, learn more about me, especially from Twitter. You'll get the whole of me, not just the professional me, but all of me on that platform.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Please like this video, share it because Ashley's amazing, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.